Okay, so showing y'all how to process a loofah. So this is a relatively small one. I just pulled it out of the garden. If I let it wait too much longer, it's going to start to rot on the vine because our weather's starting to get cold. So I start by bringing it in and literally just stomping on the thing. You'll hear it kind of crack. What this is doing is it is loosening the skin from the loofah. When I tried to peel it without doing this, I found it was nearly impossible to peel. But if you stomp on it enough, then you'll find that when you bring it over to peel it, the skin comes off relatively easily and it's not nearly as much of a pain in the butt to peel. It doesn't seem to mess with the actual sponges because again, they're filled with moisture right now, so they're pretty soft. So you can see this is already cracking, which is gonna make life a whole lot easier when it comes time for us to peel it, versus if you don't do that, you're gonna have a bear of a time. So I'm gonna bring this over here now to a cutting board. I'm not gonna show you this part, but you can take a knife and you'll see there's sort of little ridge lines down each of these, like little grooves. If you run your knife down one of these grooves, you can do that, or you can see mine's already started, so I'm not even gonna bother with a knife. And then from here, you can kind of just get your fingers up in and just try to separate as best as you can the skin from the inside. Okay, so after I stomped it, it was relatively squishy, and from here I can kind of just open it up and peel it. This one's peeling really, really nicely, which makes life so easy. They don't always peel this nicely, but you kind of just run your fingers in here, take off any rings or whatever, and sometimes with most of them I'll actually cut off the ends first, so let me go ahead and do that. Right, so slice. The end is now off, and again, I can just kind of do this. And this one's going to come off in one fell swoop, which is not necessarily typical. I don't know if it's because it was a smaller loofah or if I just gave it a better stomp than I did to the others, but there you have it. That's the skin. It looks kind of like a really fibrous cucumber or zucchini. And then from here, what I typically do is I run it under the sink just because, I mean, you can see that's gross, right? So run it under the sink to get some of that gone. So I'll do that now. And right now the seeds really aren't coming out, so I'm not too worried about them going down my drain. But I'm just kind of cleaning this up so it's not quite as messy. And then I take it back over here. I usually just use a pair of scissors and figure out how big I want each sponge to be. There's still seeds in here, so it's a little bit tricky to cut, but there you go. You cut it kind of like that. So I'm going to make 4 out of this one. And then once I do that, you'll see that I have a whole bunch of kind of ready to go sponges that I need to wash off in the sink. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to plug up the sink and just fill it up with some not too painfully cold water. And from here, I'll take this guy. This was an older loofah that I just peeled like 30 minutes ago. Put it in the sink. And I can just massage it like this with the water. And you can kind of get the gunk and the seeds out of it. And what's nice right now about these seeds is that they are, they float, they're buoyant. So once I get all of the seeds and gunk out, I don't have to worry about it going down my drain because I just take a colander and kind of use that to skim the surface of the sink. And it works pretty nicely. I've found it easier. I would try to do these a whole loofah at a time in the bathtub before, and that was a pain in the butt. I found that by cutting them ahead of time, I can get my finger through the whole thing, and it just makes it way easier to de-seed them. Obviously, if it can dry on the vine, I've been told that that is the easiest way to do this, but in my climate, these things would rot on the vine before they dried on the vine just because it starts to get cold. And I don't want that. I spent too much time and energy trying to grow it. So this one isn't totally done at this point, but you can see already just how much better that looks than it did before. And then if I wanted to put that, so there's still a couple seeds, if I wanted to put that in some bleach water, I could, or I could just dry it out. I usually dry it out in front of a fan for a while until it's solid. It will be really, really brittle when it is dry. All you need to do to make it more like spongy again is just rehydrate it. Okay, you can see just how gross this water is at this point. The cool thing is that the seeds, they do float. So I can just do that to kind of capture the seeds in the gunk. That way not all of it goes down my drain and I don't have to put any stress or pressure on my garbage disposal. So I'll just do that and empty it into the compost bin until I have just a couple seeds left, and then I'll let it go down the drain. Then to do just a bit of comparison, this one was dried out just a couple days ago. So this is what a fresh, dried, cleaned loofah looks like. These guys I haven't dried yet, but I just cleaned them fully. These ones are unbleached and they're from last year. You can see they're a little brownish, but they're still totally functional. And I was curious to see what would happen if I bleached some of the ones from last year, and that's what they look like once they're bleached. So kind of side-by-side comparison. Let me get this one wet. And it's cool because they go from being really stiff to being very spongy if you just get them wet. So I didn't get it quite as wet, but this is last year's unbleached, last year's bleached, side by side.